Hello and welcome to the Fields Future series from Corteva Agriscience. In this episode, we will focus on the biodiversity conservation and the role of a multi-stakeholder approach for fostering farmers' engagement in conserving the biodiversity. So my name is Valasubramanian from Corteva Agriscience. Let's start the discussion with a couple of questions, very simple ones. Can we think of food without farmers and farming community? Same way, can we think of agriculture and food systems without biodiversity? The answer is very simple, which we all of us know. It's no, because biodiversity is the basis and the lifeblood of agriculture. So all the crops and the domesticated livestock and the different varieties and the species what we see today, they originated from biodiversity. Agriculture contributes to the conservation of the sustainable conservation of the biodiversity, also for the sustainable use of the biodiversity, but is also a major driver for biodiversity loss. Just take a small example. Look at the banana, which is a common food and all of us like it, right? Um, More than 1,500 varieties of bananas have been reported, but as of today, only a few varieties are available in the market for us to really consume. So this is an example of that we are losing the biodiversity in the banana cultivation system, right? So the next point is about farmers and agriculture producers are among the key custodians of agricultural biodiversity and who are all engaged in one way promoting the biodiversity and also engaged in building a resilient food system. So in this kind of a context, how a multi-stakeholder approach is essential to support the farmers and farming communities through various approaches so that the biodiversity in agriculture could be conserved and sustainably used. Here it is not only about sustainable conservation, but it's also the conservation should lead to manage a balanced ecosystem, which is very much essential for ensuring the food security for us in the future. With this context, and we have a distinguished guest with us today, Dr. Arvind Kapur, distinguished fellow from the Energy Research Institute, TERI, popularly known as TERI. Dr. Kapur is one of the veterans in the seed industry in India, having over 35 years of experience um, in the seed industry, working with a lot with the government and the farming community and for the benefit of the farming community. So, Dr. Kapur, I think welcome you onto this important dialogue and thanks for
Thank you.
time today. Let's start with a conversation with a small point about why biological diversity is important in the context of farming.
Well, when we talk about diversity, we talk about diverse biological systems which exist in nature in under different agroclimatic conditions. Why they exist? Because they survive under typical environmental conditions, because they have the genetic system which adopt to those conditions. And that is why we call it the diversity we need, because they can adopt to different agroclimatic conditions and different biotic and abiotic stresses. So these diverse material which is very good for the agriculture, because we are looking into a kind of adaptive system and the genetic makeup, so that we can make this genetic makeup through breeding to make a product which has those kind of traits which can give you the either biotic or abiotic stress management through the genetic system. So these diverse is not only from now. When agriculture started, it started with the same kind of diversity, because when farmers were start domesticating the plants, they pick up the plants from the nature, and they try to grow in their fields and try to select which is looking the best. So they under this selection pressure at that time, they start selecting the plants, and slowly they domesticated it. Now, when we say that when the seed systems were not there, in the world, and there are some breeders were doing, and farmers were not getting every year the seed. So what farmers does, they just grow their seed, make a selection of good plants, and then keep on doing it. So with that, they conserved, and they made the diverse system very efficient at that time, because they produce their own seed by selection process. So diversity can be created either through selection or through crossing. Now, crossing is a man intervention, the human being intervention into the system, that we cross different ecotypes or different diverse material, and then try to select under the selection pressure. Maybe we have temperate zone, or tropical zone, or we are working on subtropical zone. So based on the selection pressure we have, or biotic selection pressure, or abiotic selection pressure, we select the best one, which is adoptive. So this is the whole system which was exist before we had a very robust ecosystem of seed, and seed can move, seed can travel, seed can go everywhere. So when the seed system came, then the system also changed with the different things. So this is what I can say upfront, that what it means to the biodiversity, to the agriculturist or the common man.
No, very good point, sir. So talking about diversity through selection and crossing, right? Now, this actually brings me to a point that the type of genetic resources what we have, since domestication, we look at the thousands of years, there are two types of biodiversities that we could really consider in the agricultural system. One is adaptive, the other one is the indigenous ones. And what is the proportion of this adaptive versus indigenous as of today, or into the agricultural production system, based on your experience, because you have quite a bit of experience in working in the vegetable sector. If you take vegetable sector as an example, and how this adaptive versus indigenous diversity of this lines are used in producing new crops to conserve the diversity.
Before the CBD laws came into existing in somewhere in 90s, before that, we considered agriculture as a global village. So the materials were moving very easily, only through the IPPC, we call it phytosanitary certificates, because we can't carry the diseases to different regions. So before that, the most of the material was moving very freely between the institution, between the breeders. You just write or get information that the material is lying there. So it is being just, you can introduce any kind of crops in a country, because many countries that don't have the indigenous crops. They are only imported crops, but they adaptive to those conditions now over years because of the breeding. So at present, if you see that we have indigenous, we call it the center of origins. That's the only word we use at present, because there are certain species, they have center of origin, where still certain species of that genre exist as such. So there are different adoptive things which they brought from outside. Now, when we make crosses and selections, we get adopted to those conditions, because if you see the genetic system as such in the plant crops, they have, we call it 5% of the genome is active, 95% the genome is hidden, we call it not active, and under different condition that inactive system become active, because that is called adoption. Because once you keep on exposing a material into the environment, it gets slowly adaptive, because the weak one or the get killed, and then ecotypes develop. This is what we call land races. That is why important is that a land race is today is very valuable for a breeder, because land races are adoptive races, because they adopt to those conditions over years under natural selection process. And when we call it indigenous, because they adaptive to the indigenous conditions. So a particular land race, if it is, say in northeast, I have hot pepper, which is being grown there, like jalokia or those kind of products, which stabilize there. They have the adoptive there, so they are indigenous to that place. But now we did that. We brought that product to our breeding program, And we say that, okay, we cross to bring more pungency or more resistance, because they are adaptive to resistance condition, because there are a lot of disease pressure was there. And now we get the ecotype or landrace, which is resistant. So that resistance gene we are bringing into the cultivated in the other areas, and we use this material. So you can say that there are ecotypes, there are the indigenous species, and there are the adaptive, which is globally been taken care of by the breeders. And you can get material, say like tomato, you can get from the Lima, the Peru, where the even the potato was there. So those species of the still exist of tomato, like Pipilini or Peruvianum, we call it in Peru. So those Peruvianum, but Peruvianum is a species, but when we see the land races, there are certain Peruvianum land races which are resistant to many diseases. So we try to cross it. We call white crosses. These white crosses bring many genes to there. So that way, the importance of these indigenous and adaptive species are there.
So talking about this, your example of the hot pepper coming from the northeastern parts. So now that's into the breeding system. So new varieties are being developed. So this is a way we could consider that the breeding and breeding processes, either it is by the farmers or the breeding community, it enables the biodiversity conservation and advancement. Um, what what would be your view on this?
See, conservation, there are two types we say that in conservation. One in situ conservation, and one is that in vitro conservation. So, see, in when we say we collect a material, there are gene bank created long back. These gene banks have collected from all over the world the germplasm which exists there in their small boxes. They kept at a low temperature, low humidity conditions, and they kept for a long time, because now you have the conditions you can create to go for 50 years or more. So this is one type of conservation, that you are protecting certain species in our in vitro condition in our boxes. But there are certain things which we need, which can exist in situ, in nature, because those already have dynamic equilibrium with the changing environment. As the environment change, everybody want to survive. All biological systems, they have the capability of survivability. I think survivability lead to change in their genetic makeup or system, or arouse certain genes or mutate certain genes. Mutation is part of that type when we call it diversity. So that mutation doesn't mean that you induce it, but it's a natural induction system which make the species survive or make the land race survive. And that those kind of adaptive genes, which we call it, or mutated genes, it is very good for our breeding, because we know that they are naturally selected, and naturally over years they get selected.
Yes, sir. So no country is self-sufficient in terms of the diverse germplasm. Now, that actually lead to the availability of the plant genetic resources from different countries moving around for the use of the farmers and plant breeders to conserve and also to come out with new varieties. So this has actually triggered the establishment of the Treaty on the Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, which is popularly known as the International Seed Treaty. So, what are the main objectives of this treaty, and how this is playing a major role in terms of the in biodiversity conservation and sustainable use of the germplasm?
See, as I told you that 90, when the CBD laws came, there are two things which trigger that. That the turmeric case was very famous at that time, and there is a soap nut from Africa, and that people say that this is the traditional knowledge created in a particular geography, why it is being protected and patented. So the whole concept of biodiversity came into the CBD. But at that time, the FAO, the agriculture part of it, they think that there are two kind of system we need. One is system which is called bioprospecting, where the plant systems are being used by pharma industry or the chemical industry to extract certain ingredients from the plant material, and then they make a product and sell it. That way, what happened that in many of these species, they become extinct because there is no replenishment of those plants, because the seed system was not there, because they are the native grown, and nobody's planting them, that is grown in the nature. But when FAO thinks about the agri-biodiversity, they say agri-biodiversity is a different system, because agri-biodiversity is not only crossing, creating a new diversity, but also creating new recombinants and new diverse systems itself. So we need a different kind of approaches, because we need to exchange globally. We cannot survive without that, because this system has to be there. So they created International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. The system says that all the members who ratified this treaty, they they will create a system called multilateral system. Now, this multilateral system means that all the key crops, germplasm, will be deposited or in the ages of our gene banks, and a system, this treaty will ask through MLS the countries to deposit this material in a particular gene bank and being shared. Now, again, many countries, smaller countries, they say no, from what we will get out of it. So then they say that, okay, let us create a called SMTA, the material transfer agreements. So they created a material transfer agreements where access and benefit sharing system started. Now, how to access, what benefit should go to where? So that system was created. So then under Nagoya Protocol, because then Nagoya Protocol came into existence, and in under Nagoya Protocol, the benefit system was created that whosoever will access the material, when he will sell the product in the market, when commercialize it, he will pay say 0.1% of the profitability which he gets, the benefit which he gets. So that was the system created. Again, it was discussed, and then FAO said that we create a corpus of this benefit shared material, the benefit sharing, and this corpus will be given to countries who are part of the treaty or part of the multilateral system, and they will give money back to the conservationist or the seed banks. That this money will go back to not only to conserve the material, also protect and make the ecological system such a way. You need money for that. So a lot of projects been given to many countries, including Asian countries and African countries. But again, when we talk about benefit sharing, we say that when we access a material, it take 8 to 10 years to make a product. Now, then know how we can detect that which person has used which material, and then this material can be shared. So who will pay? If I have accessed the material, I have released the material, somebody also else will use it, but he will not pay because I have accessed, I will pay. So this, to avoid this complexity, the International Seed Federation, I was part of it, we decided that we should look into another model. So we suggested to the treaty that we have a subscription model. Now, in subscription model, the minimum you have to be member of that model for 10 years plus 3 years if you go out. Because 3 years plus you have to give money. So mean total 13 years. So in subscription model, every company who want to access material of a particular crop or crops will pay every year of their turnover as subscription. So if we say 0.1% or whatever, 0.5%, so we offered that we will give you an offer that we will every year, each company who will access material will pay a corpus. That way you are getting every year money to the treaty, which can be used for conservation. I think this model is being discussed in GB9. I was part of it, GB10 and GB11. There's a committee, look into that. Now, the other weakness which is what we observed in the treaty is that in the Annex 1, there were 64 crops. Now, this is not exhaustive list. There are many crops left out which are part of the food and agriculture system. So we say that expansion of this Annex 1, 64 crops. So they again the committee suggested that we should bring all the crops. Many countries posed. So the problem is that to bring a consensus of 124 countries is a task, because everybody thinks what is for me there. So I think the system is evolving, and I think world over this system is being now discussed, and we have full confidence that we'll arrive at consensus.
Yeah. So talking about IT PGRFA, one of the thing what I understood is it is also to recognize the enormous contribution being made by the farmers to the diversity of the crops that they actually use to feed the population. So in ITPGRFA and farmers, when you look at these two contexts, how actually the farmers are being recognized. One side we talked about the benefit sharing, the people, the plant breeding companies and other private players and anyone using the germplasm, they pay the royalty back, and so that the money in the form of a benefit sharing. But how these farmers who contribute to the whole biodiversity conservation advancement and how they are recognized through this ITPGRFA treaty.
See, in treaty, there's a clause 9 which says that the farmers have the right to protect its material, to use the protected material, to save the seed, sow the seed. But the only condition which we are looking into is that if he can save the protected material, where the problem comes with the treaty is that most of the countries, they say that the farmer should be allowed to use. Now, or farmer used to protect, there's no problem in farmer protecting their varieties under the same laws. And treaty also allows it that farmer can save the, they can protect their things. But the issue comes that how to recognize the farmer or the communities together, whether say if 10 farmers come with the same kind of protection, they say I also have, we also have, so whom we should give. So what the treaty decided that let us give to the communities. Communities, we can say that where communities can, we can fund it community to further conserve those kind of material which is locally grown. Now, the rights of farmers are protected, there is no doubt about it. But only thing is that our system, UPOF system is not having that kind of protection for farmers' varieties because they are not stable and they are not uniform. Because we work with the NDUS system, it is neither novel, nor distinct, not uniform, not stable. So I think in our system, in Indian system, in a PVP system which we have, it has the clause where farmer can put the variety for protection, and there are around, I think, 8,000 varieties are already been protected. Only thing when I asked this PVP authority that if the material is segregating, if material is not stable, how the claims will come? I can ask for claim. There's no doubt, and company wanted to pay the benefit, no doubt about it. But how to put it that in the real context? Because then we don't want to enter into the litigation with the farmers. We don't want to enter into the kind of system where farmer will not get for a long time anything. So I think these old systems are little bit liquid or labile at this time, but I think they will slowly settle down because ultimately the benefit will go to the farmers. If farmer get more yield, more profit per unit area, it is his material which is being upgraded into different combination of genetic resources and give back to him. We are not, all breeders are trying to give best material to the farmers. Ultimately, it's benefit for the farmers. I think there should be a balance between the protection of the farmers' rights and the breeders' rights and the combination of biological system patenting, because there is a lot of opposition coming now for the patents of the biological system. Many countries have disallowed that no biologicals except microorganism or except certain things, it is not being protected. Now the new dimension which is I can highlight here, the digital sequence information as considered as virtual germplasm.
Yeah.
Now all breeders talk about that. Can we call it virtual? Can we use it like that? Can we make it a synthetic biology? It is a far-fetched idea. Now, what are we going to protect ATPG that ATCG system? 4 letters in what combination they are? I think most of the digital systems at present are open systems. Anybody can get that sequences. I think little bit we are, it's my own opinion that we are complicating the system. We should come out very clearly what system we want to make it as a product. I know that digital sequences can do something, but for agriculture, you need to have a real germplasm to cross for breeders, isn't it? They can detect that something is there. But I think farmers' right, I'm pro to that, should be protected, but there should be clarity there. That clarity should be provided that what we are going to do with that and how we are going to benefit the farmers or the communities there. I still believe that we should create a hotspot community system where certain species or certain kind of germplasm exist. We can support them to conserve because without the money, they will not grow the crop. Because ultimately, their livelihood is their land and their
Yeah,
food. And
yeah.
I think if in today's context, globally, hardly few farmers or a few areas where farmers really conserving. Most of the farmers are coming into the commercial chain because they want to grow best crop, they want to take the best seed, they want to get the more yield. So who will pay for them for this conservation? That is why treaty said we will pay, provided we have a very clear system that who will bring the project, we will pay the money so that that money can go to for their livelihood also because they are conserving. So I think at present, yes, a lot of discussions happening globally. So one thing is very clear in our mind that if we put so much restriction and so much these kind of rules, the parallel system of germplasm will start because many people, many fly by night player, anything, they just bring germplasm and they pay nothing. And they just use it. Once they use it, you cannot track and trace because track and trace is humanly impossible. So let us make a very transparent, easy system. Okay, ease of doing business, we call it ease of doing research, so that everybody should pay. There should be a system of giving back to the society.
That brings to our last point. And for all these things, government policies have to be in place. I mean, proper policies and enforcements are required. Considering our current situation, the current policies are good enough, or any revisions are required from your perspective to support farmers in conserving the biodiversity?
See, at present, the problem is that we have there's hardly any entry barrier of in the seed industry, particularly the seed chain system. That anybody can come today and tomorrow he wants selling that this is my variety. Now, how to know that that is his variety or farmer's variety or some company's variety or whose variety is this? So law should be very clear. I think what we need, not only the laws which are there, but how to implement those policies, how to get these policy to the basic root level. If awareness should be there within the seed industry, within the farmers, within the public sector, that how we can bring these transparencies of systems. I think implementation part, transparency part is not very clear at present because the materials are moving globally. The seed systems are working and everybody says. What I'm saying is that policy should be driven by the sector itself. Sector should say that this is what we need and this is what can help us to grow together. And we are sharing. We are not restricting anybody. It is open system, but everybody should pay what is due to other, so that it should not uh, be illegally acquired or illegally sold. So that is where I think policies now being should be revised because our seed laws are as archaic as I think we have seed law 1966. It doesn't change. They have not changed. We have 83. The seed orders remain the same. Our blue books are very old. They need changes because biological technology systems are changing. With the new technology, we should bring the new policy. Now, the new seed bill is hanging in the parliament for 20 years. That means the seriousness of the government towards agriculture. I think it should not reflect like that. If there is a need of change, it should be changed because there are experts, the expert committees, and there are. If it is not infringing any social systems, if it is not impacting any social system, it should be released or should go back to the sector that we don't want to change. What is your suggestion? I think this dynamism should be there in policies. I think we will see that how this new seed will come, but certainly such a delay will not help anybody, including agriculture, including government, including sector. Nobody will be blamed because they are still governed by the same old system, which are no more valid or viable. Everybody will take advantage of that.
Yes, Dr. Kapur, I think science is continuously advancing. New technology, new varieties are really coming through, and new solutions are coming through. And considering all these developments globally, I think the policy revisions are very imperative. So that actually brings us to our conclusion that biodiversity conservation in agriculture is very critical for a sustainable agriculture. There are multi-stakeholders involved in the whole process, and farmers are important custodians as well as agents of who are involved in biodiversity conservation and also who contribute to the resilient agriculture. What is actually needed is a support from different stakeholders in the whole process who can help the farmers more and more to conserve the biodiversity, which would lead to a sustainable agriculture. With that, Dr. Kapur, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your vast experience and your views. Thank you very much, Dr. Kapur.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to share my views.